Let's talk about the far-left group Jane's Revenge, because they claimed responsibility for that. They went so far as to spray paint their name on the wall. So do you intend to prosecute them?
We intend, if we find them, to do that. There is a
so you can't find them?
If you have information about those groups, we would be happy to.
That is your job.
That's right, and we are putting heavy resources into this.
Yeah, Garland was also questioned about the DOJ's controversial memo ordering the FBI to use counterterrorism resources to investigate parents protesting school board mandates. Garland told the Senate Judiciary Committee today that memorandum was aimed at threats of violence, not parents making complaints. But these are precisely why Republicans put in the GOP Commitment to America a Parents' Bill of Rights, which was unveiled by House GOP lawmakers a little bit earlier today, along with parents and families at an event later this afternoon. And I asked Speaker McCarthy about his reaction to Garland's comments.
Why would he go and spend the time of the Department of Justice going after parents that we heard just today that are coming had concerns? One father who had his daughter was harassed in a bathroom by a male wearing a skirt. And as he goes to the school board meeting to find out what happened with that, that is what they said was a terrorist activity. We listened to a parent when she got up to ask what was being taught in her kids' education, said you had to write a letter, then they sued her. This is harassment. And to label them as terrorists, I think he should apologize to the American public and make sure this never happens again.
The House Judiciary Committee, of course, Greta, is investigating that. I'll also add that the deadline for Garland to hand over documents about that memo to the chairman, Jim Jordan, is today.
Kimberly Ducart, thank you. Professor Emeritus at Harvard Law School and author of the book, The Price of Principle, Professor Alan Dershowitz joins me. Good evening, sir. And I want to start with your former student, Senator Ted Cruz. He grilled, probably by better words, barbecued the Attorney General about the statute 18 U.S.C. 1507, which makes it a crime to intend to influence a judge at his residence, or there's more to the statute than that. But it's a crime to go outside and scream and yell, probably with the intent to influence the judge. Fair examination of the Attorney General, and should there have been some charges brought against the people at the justices' homes?
Well, I wish Ted had attended the class in which I taught about this. And what I argued was that that statute is unconstitutional as it affects Supreme Court justices. Supreme Court justices are not insulated from being yelled at or screamed at or having protests in front of their house, because they can't be influenced by this kind of thing. They're not like juries, or they're not even like, trial court judges. So I think the statute is unconstitutional if it prevents protests in front of the homes of justices. It's not unconstitutional as it relates to jurors or maybe state court judges or lower court federal judges. So I don't think Ted was right about that. Look, there should be resources to protect.
I will tell you this.
Yeah.
This was not just a casual protest now and then outside a justice house. I have a friend who lives on the block of one of the justices, and it was every Wednesday night, sometimes yelling very crude things in front of children, but meant to intimidate. Yeah. It certainly seemed to me it was meant to intimidate the family of this justice and perhaps to scare them and make it very uncomfortable for that family as well as the neighbors. But the statute doesn't apply to that.
I'm sure that's right, but justices have to have thick skins. And I don't want to see protests about justices constrained. Sometimes the protest will be by the right, sometimes the protest will be by the left. But justices of the Supreme Court have to develop a thick skin, and they have to tell their families
is it a thick skin, though? I mean, let me talk about this. I mean, look, I'm all in favor of protests, too, and you have a right to be obnoxious and to yell and scream. But the question of whether it was the intent to influence, and is that really, isn't that a question for a jury to decide? Well, that's what the statute says, intent to influence.
There was an intent to influence, and that's okay. That's what protests are. Protests are an intent to influence. Look, don't you think that the kid who leaked the Supreme Court opinion overruling Roe versus Wade had an intent to influence? Of course he did. And probably that isn't a crime. Maybe it should be, but it isn't. That wouldn't be protected by the First Amendment. But I don't want to see protests for public figures limited. Now, you can change it. You can narrow the law. You can say a certain amount of decibels, or it can't be done after 10 o'clock at night, or it has to be a certain distance from the house. That's all okay. It's called time, place, and manner restrictions. But what you can't do is you can't say that people don't have the right to try to influence Supreme Court justices through protests and in front of their homes. That I think goes too far. That's probably something where the ACLU and I would agree. We're further apart than we've ever been before on many issues. But on this one, I think we would probably agree.
I just want to make plain that I'm all in favor of protests, even to be obnoxious, even to be loud and everything else. My only difference is that whether or not it's a jury question of what the intent was and whether it was a nefarious intent. But that's
I'm conceding that the intent was completely to influence the outcome of the decision. So I'm not disputing that. I'm saying even if the intent was, even if the people stood outside and said, we want you to change your opinion. We want you to change your opinion. Without a doubt, I still think that's constitutionally protected speech. But then again, I may be a First Amendment extremist.
I was just going to say, wait a second. I was just going to say I may be persuaded by you because you may have persuaded me on this. Because I'm wondering whether or not as I think about this, is every protest is an intent. But anyway, we'll have to leave it for another day. But you may have persuaded me, because I'm a purist, too, on the First Amendment. Professor Alan Dershowitz, thank you.
Well, that would be you've made my day. If I persuaded Greta Van Susteren, wow, I appreciate it. Because you persuaded
Anyway, thank you, sir.